And with that, I want to turn it over to Robin Merle so I can be a student.
Thank you, Lisa. I am so delighted to be here. And a huge thank you to you, Lisa, to Viviana, and to the great Rutgers Center for Women in Business. And I have to say, I am so proud to be a Rutgers graduate. I can unequivocally say that it was the best education I've ever had, even though I went on for a master's somewhere else. Rutgers was incredible. As Lisa said, I was a member of the first class of women, but what Lisa didn't know, I was a member of Rutgers College. There were less than 500 women among 25,000 enrolled. And many of you, judging by your graduation year, probably don't know that Rutgers at one point was all male. So let's get into our topic. As far as career transitions, I am also atypical. My career has spanned work at really only 3 major organizations, nonprofits. I did not transition easily. I am now, or I was, what I now call a loyalist. Someone who has been at their company or their organization for more than 10 years. Do we have any loyalists in this group today? If you could just put it in the chat or raise your digital hand, I'd love to see if we have any loyalists. Yep. Rebecca, we got one. Another, 22 years. From Jay Collins, 16 years, 12, wow, more than I thought. That's amazing. Well, I am so, wow, 23 years at Pfizer. So you know what it's like to give your all 24/7 to a company and to be really embedded in that company and to work even while you're sleeping, in the sense that you create emails and you're always thinking about what's going on. There's a lot of you here. This is fantastic, okay? Because I'm so glad you showed up. Now, I quickly learned after my first, last, and only involuntary exit, I had never been forced out before, that having the mindset to love change was one of the most emotional strengths that I or anybody can cultivate. So there were 20 comments yesterday in a LinkedIn post about the positive aspects of career change, and I want to share with you my favorite. If you play it safe because you're uncomfortable with change, you'll never know what else you're capable of. Multiple transitions are now part of the labor landscape. Some stats say, and you may be surprised at this, that the average worker starting at age 18 will have 12 different jobs. Has that caused you to start thinking back? For those of you with lengthier tenures, I've heard 6. For those of you that are involved in startups, it may be 15. But regardless of the number, we're no longer at a time where loyalists like me and like you roam the earth. So I'm guessing that you registered for this class because you're ready to take action or you're preparing to take action. You want more of something, you're restless, maybe the culture where you work has become toxic, but you're ready to move on. Now, I asked Viviana to do a poll upon registration about where you are in your transition journey, and I'd like to ask her to repeat that now for those of us that are here on this call. I'd like you to choose the one answer that's most reflective of how you feel. This 61 of 87% anticipated. Okay, participated. Lost a job within the past 6 months to a year, 30%. That's interesting. I did not realize that so many of you may have had an involuntary exit, even though we actually chose this month of January for this call because it is the month where the most firings occur. During the pandemic, it was March and April, but now it's January. preparing to leave my current job. So there's a few of you who are thinking about leaving for various reasons, and you came here to figure out how to do it while you're still working. Deciding on your next chapter, this is really the bulk of you, and I'm glad you showed up because we're going to talk about how to make that decision and what process you need to go through to make that decision on your own terms so it works for you. Passively exploring opportunities. This was a wonderful phrase that someone said when they registered, and I think it really characterizes a lot of us that get, kind of restless. We have a bad day and we think, oh, that's it, I'm going to move on. We have a good day, we don't need to move on, or we hear about others that are moving on. So the process I'm going to take you through will help you decide, are you ready to take action? And then other, for whatever the other means. So we can stop sharing that now. Okay, so we have another poll that we want to do related to this one. What is the one thing that's holding you back the most in your career transition? You don't know where to start, fear of the unknown, no time, you're busy doing your work, uncertain that this is the best move, inertia, my favorite habit, or something else entirely. Okay, so neck and neck here with fear of the unknown and uncertainty that this is the best move. I can tell you that fear of the unknown for most people is the #1 reason they stay put. They stay where they are. Don't know where to start sort of accompanies that because you're afraid to think about what might be on the other side, and maybe you haven't looked for a job for those loyalists maybe in 10-20 years. So it's a little bit scary. Uncertain that this is the best move. Boy, that always is part of my thinking. Will it be better? Will it be worse? What will it be? Now, inertia is a comfort zone for all of us. We really don't have to change what we're doing. And other, there's a huge section of other here. So Viviana, if you could stop sharing, and thank you all for that. Is someone brave enough to tell us what we haven't put on this, what the other is that's holding them back in their career transition? Maybe put it in the chat or unmute and speak up. And we can take this down from our screen. Excellent vacation and benefits that you have now is one of the comments. So you're enjoying. Okay, received an unexpected promotion, right? I'm going to help you figure out what you want to do next in your chapter. Timing while waiting for new leadership to arrive. Okay. There were anybody else on? Okay. All right, here's something. I'm exhausted from my current job, worried it's going to be a long, exhausting process, and afraid I won't find a workplace that is not toxic. Right. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. There's no question that changing jobs can be stressful, especially if it's an unplanned transition or we're ambivalent. But let me say right now, you owe it to yourself to explore. No one has your best interests in mind other than you. But why is this so difficult? Why are we afraid of the unknown? It's just a job, right? It's just vacation and benefits. It's the way we support ourselves, right? Here's what no one else tells you about the true meaning of work in our lives. Our identities are wrapped up in our work. We talk about ourselves in terms of what we do, particularly as we get older and more entrenched in our roles. Even if you're just in it for a paycheck, to fund something else that you're creating or you're passionate about, where you work is your community. It's no longer just about gaining resources. So did you know that the average person will spend about 90,000 hours at work throughout their lifetime? This is based on research from Gettysburg College. You bet we want to be happy. So if you're thinking about career changes, you're actually thinking about how to untangle your identity from your title and your company to create a new narrative for yourself. And we're going to focus on that process today. And if there's only one thing you take away from this session, it should be this: your value and identity are not stagnant. They're evolving as you change and grow. You are not forever the VP of importance at biotech today. You could be giving yourself the space to explore in your life the founder of biotech tomorrow. But let's stop here. What's coming up for you? What are you thinking when I talk about how a job is more than just a job? It's about your identity. Any comments you want to share, either live or in the chat? That summarizes it well. And I will tell you, during the pandemic, when millions of people lost their jobs, I had a social worker who consulted with me on the book, and she said people were reeling because not only did they lose their resources, but they lost what they had engineered their lives around, what the purpose was that they had found and who they were. The silver lining, which is what we talk about here, is that once you're not chugging along day by day, you get to really think about, why is my job my identity? Do I really want to work this hard? What else do I want to do to inspire me every day? So I'm going to share my screen now to give you some sense of the current market. So right now, U.S. workers have an average tenure of about 4.1 years with a single employer. For those of us in the professional business services, it's close to 3.5 years. 37% of the workforce changed or lost their jobs in 2020. Okay. COVID really shook up the job market. Not only that, but people are working longer. 67%, almost 70% of workers age 40 to 65 plan to continue working after they turn 66. And ironically, still about half of full-time workers age 50 to 55 lose their jobs involuntarily. The fifth decade is the cliff decade. So what does that mean? It means that it makes sense to learn how to change jobs successfully because we're all working longer and we have the opportunity to do multiple roles that inspire us. Now, I work with the CEO of Eminence Communications, Maria Rosati, on career transitions. And I'm going to walk you through our process for getting you to think differently about yourself and avoid career myopia. So we call this the career inflection point. And instead of being anxious or uncertain and afraid of facing the unknown, you want to view this change as one, a positive upward trajectory. Two, a chance to reset your priorities and reevaluate yourself. You want to be able to control your future narrative, which is what Carissa is talking about, and leave old habits and thinking behind, right? So how do you do this? How do you get to all of this information? So what Maria has done is she's developed a questionnaire that we use to tease out our hidden thoughts about ourselves and what kind of work we'd like to do to inspire us. So we ask you to ask these questions. What motivates me? This may seem like a simple question, but it may change from day to day. You may not have the answer right away. Write down every answer. What is my why? Now, this is a trendy question that's going around in the coaching circles. And I said, oh, I can't put this question down. But then I researched the source of it, which is a book called Start With Why. It's written by Simon Sinek. I recommend it. And it tells you basically the steps for how to figure out what inspires you and what enables you to inspire others. This is really the idea of leading your career with purpose. And something else that I think about, and not being concerned about the outcome. First, figure out what motivates you, why you're doing what you're doing. And then another, of course, trendy question, which we did ask in the beginning, what are my superpowers? I believe we have more than one, but these are the things that you do better than anybody else. And they could be small, they could be large, but these are your superpowers. These are what make you you and what you bring to your career. And of course, your professional and personal values, that's a huge conversation. Your biggest accomplishment, not what someone else thinks it is, but what you think it is, and what is your end goal. These are not easy questions, which is why we lead you through it in a process to get you thinking. From this, we actually develop what we call, your story. What's your narrative? And go back and forth with you about, does this ring true? Is this something that you can stand behind? Now, I'd like to stop there and just ask, what's coming up for you? Is this difficult for you to do? Have you tried anything? Thank you for bringing that up. That's interesting. One, yes, you have validated these are tough questions. They look simple. We can all fool ourselves and give an answer that we think other people want to hear. But then we kind of have to step away and give ourselves some space to say, well, really, think about it maybe 2 or 3 mornings where you wake up and you're having some coffee, which to me is always the best time for thinking, or when you're running or walking or doing something physical, and speak it into your phone, and try to do it that way. As if you're giving yourself, you're cheating on yourself by saying, oh, this really occurred to me right now about what I'd like to do and what my why is. The other thing about superpowers that you said, I was coaching another woman yesterday, and she said, my problem is I'm too competent. I do everybody else's work. Just because you have a superpower, let's say that you're great at scheduling meetings and getting on time, doesn't mean you have to use it anymore. You really don't. You can try to do something else that you think is a superpower. Maybe you enjoy, like you just did, being creative in the way you express yourself.
So Robin, looking at the chat, there are a bunch of folks that are writing in, and there's a consistent message that I'm seeing. Not only is it scary, but you have to be vulnerable. I think Nicole said it best. It helps to be vulnerable and honest with yourself. And you can always change what it is. And
Exactly.
I think that's really key. How do we get over that fear? What if we figure out we don't like what's motivating us right now, or maybe we want to change our personal and professional values. Maybe we want to be evolved, using Serena Williams' words. So how do we start that exercise?
Yeah. So one of the best ways to get rid of the fear and to start the exercise is to start talking with other people and to explore things. And to ask them, and I talk about this, it's what I call reciprocal networking, where you ask other people how they created their worlds. How did they get to where they are? And you'd be surprised how willing people are to share. And as they say, well, this is how I crafted my narrative, you get to think a little bit more about, oh, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Maybe, I see that person had a struggle, just like I had a struggle. And the more you talk with these people, the more you get yourself out of your silo of fear. Let's put it that way. And you start to build up an appetite for change. And once you stop thinking about, can I or can't I do this? And you start thinking about, well, look what else is out there. It helps you. It helps you move forward. Now, I will say, Lisa, this isn't an overnight process. This is a multiple day process. Okay, a multiple month process, a multiple year process. It takes time. We have been, especially if you're a loyalist and you've been in one position for so long, it takes time. Now, and you may need people to help you. You may need the Rutgers Center for Women in Business. You may need people that specialize in doing a LinkedIn profile. One other trick that I use, and I don't think this will be scary for you, is to go on the LinkedIn Learning site, and you'll find they have blogs about the 14 best paragraphs that people use to describe themselves. They're really interesting. None of them start with their title. But if you read those narratives and then you sit down and you write only 3 or 4 sentences, stick it in a drawer, read it again the next week, it'll start you thinking without the fear. Does that help?
Yes, I think that's great.
Okay, so let me go on to what may be, I got a lot of stuff on the screen right now. To what may be even a scarier question for you. Okay, and tell me what you think about this. But I think that this is a great way to do more self-discovery. So these are 3 questions that we ask ourselves. What do you think people say about you when you're not in the room? What would you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? And what are people saying about your peers that you want them to say about you? That's very true. And that also contributes to the negative self-talk that we do at night when you know, we think that we have less going for us than we really do. And it's very important to stop that negative self-talk and that loop, one, by awareness, and to really think about when you get up. And I tell people this, it sounds cheesy, but do some affirmations for yourself. You know, I'm great at what I do. I've led a wonderful team. I've made a difference in my work. And you may think they're cheesy, but they're no more cheesy or no more invalid than the negative stuff that you tell yourself when you're trying to get to sleep at night. So thank you. We should really think about the positive things that people might say about us. So we have somebody here.
Latoya, you know, wants them to say that she's a trusted advisor and strategic thought partner. Robin wants folks to say that, just scroll up. They want her on their team when they're doing a project because they think she'll add value.
That is incredibly brave. And I think that to get to the point where you must have been moved because you wanted to change something to get to the point where you could send out a survey like that. And as you said, then you had to wait to get to mentally and emotionally prepare to accept what they said about you. And I'm curious because it's sort of like a self initiated 360 that we've all heard about in management. Have any of you been through a 360 where your boss or your organization says, I want to help you, and so I'm going to send out this survey about your work to the people you manage, to your colleagues, to others, you tell me who you want it for. And if you have had that experience, did you accept what they said the way that Regina did, or did it cause more problems for you?
I'm just jumping in because we actually have a whole nother webinar. If you go to our website, womenatbusiness.rutgers.edu, that has all of our virtual events on demand. We did a phenomenal webinar on giving and receiving feedback. Your comment about trust is spot on. That's where it needs to come from. And the research that we've seen, women especially women of color, do not get the direct feedback they need because people are scared of giving the feedback. And what happens? Well, then we don't get the feedback that we need to improve the performance. The feedback we're given when it's constructive is about our personality or our attitudes, as opposed to a man who's told about what tactically and technically he needs to do better. And so some of those challenges with feedback exist, but at the same time, it's really important for all of us to learn how to deliver both up and down feedback and also to receive it as well. So great comments. And I definitely recommend checking out that webinar.
Yeah,
I most
thank you.
definitely will. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. And, you know, the questions that I posed to you today, and I'm going to move on, these are your quiet ways to think about it yourself without sending a survey out. You know, what do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? What are people saying about your peers that you want them to say about you? And what do you think they say about you? So you can take time quietly, privately, within, you know, your own boundaries to think about those questions and answer them for yourself. So I'm going to share my screen again. And let's see where we are. Okay. Okay. So let's say we do this work, and of course, this is, you know, a very contrived session here, as if we've done this work, we've mentally prepared ourselves. What happens next? Let opportunities find you. So this, you may feel that this is woo-woo. It really isn't, because as we know, fortune favors the prepared mind. This means that all the emotional work, all the self-perception work that you've done prepares you for change and allows you to act when the time comes, and it will. Time and time again, I've seen that people show up in our lives when we need them to show up in our lives, right? Now, if you feel guilty on any level, like you're leaving your team or you're leaving your project, remember that you'll spend almost 90,000 hours of your lifetime working. So you want to be happy. This is really your time. You're the CEO of you for this session, right? And for this part of your career journey. How to get around uncertainty? Scope out the marketplace. You can do this in the privacy of your Google world. Go on Indeed. Take a look. If you want to be something completely different in a completely different industry, go on and see what skills are required and see if it matches what motivates you and what inspires you, right? And I did an exercise with someone I was coaching. They wanted to transition from a tech job, which we know is in turmoil right now, that marketplace, to nonprofit work on climate change. Many people get to a point in their, not many, but a lot that I speak with, where they're working for a for-profit company, and they feel if they work for a nonprofit, it'll make them feel better, it'll give them more purpose. So it's a dream, and it needs some reality around it. So we made it real by a simple step. We Googled why we were speaking, a national organization that deals with climate change. We looked at the people on the board and on the staff. You can do this. And suddenly that dream had gravity. It had people attached to it. And now it was a question of how to network your way in. Right? Use social media to build your presence. I know that Lisa and the center has done a whole probably more than one session on LinkedIn and social media. And I can tell you that it is very important. When I was recruiting people for a position, I would rewrite their resumes for them. I'd send them to a client. The client inevitably would say, I want to see their LinkedIn profile. So this is a whole other topic. And I know that you've gotten a lot of education around this. And networking. There is a hidden job market out there. 85% of people find their jobs through networking, and 70% of jobs are never published. They're either filled internally or they're filled by recruiters who have networked with you. And so now I want to do our final poll. Are you working with a mentor and or a recruiter? You may be working with both. It seems that the majority of you are working with neither. So we won't take up too much time because I know we have about 10 minutes left. But I'd really like for you to unpack that for us. Is it because you haven't thought about it? You're not ready to take that step? Thank you for sharing that vulnerability. And I think that I have a love-hate relationship about recruiters. Recruiters work for the company. They don't work for you. I've been one. I've seen the issues go back and forth between clients and people wanting a job. And I personally think that networking strategically with people who will open your eyes to new opportunities is more productive. As I said, once you're prepared mentally to go forward, 85% of people find their jobs through networking. And I want to just go quickly as we move on here.
That being said, I do think
Yes.
I've seen a ton of comments in the chat, and I've actually had some very positive experiences with recruiters. So I think that might be a follow-up session at some point, either later on this year, unrelated, because it sounds like a lot of folks have a lot of questions. So noted, and the center will take care of that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad for the person that talked about sponsors, because that's a whole different thing from a mentor.
Yep.
So let me just give you my 5 points quickly about networking. And you'll see that none of these questions have anything to do with, can you get me a job? Though they may lead you in that direction. Will this be an interesting meeting? Will I learn something new from this person? Will I be able to help this person in any way? And Ashley, I know from Chief, we all help each other. We do a give and take all the time, but that's important as well. Will they be able to help me in any way? And will this help me decide on my next step? So when I had my involuntary exit, I talked to so many interesting people and learned so many interesting things. Eventually, I stopped taking meetings because all I was doing was getting a larger network. But as I thought about what I had learned, I took stock. I was pretty strategic on how I wanted to present myself and came to an idea about what I wanted to do next as my next chapter. So all of these questions are really important to figuring out those questions. What motivates me? What is my why? Sometimes we learn by definitely not following what someone else did, and what do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? Okay. So I'm going to skip this and just go right to the conclusion, which these may seem obvious to you, but I think they're worth remembering. Seek positions and people that align with your values. I frequently tell people, choose your next job based on who you work for, not on the company, not on its reputation, not on its quote, advertising about its reputation. And someone who works for startups said that doesn't really work in the startup environment because people leave so quickly. I still say, choose your next job based on the people that surround you. It makes a real difference. Anticipating the unknown is much worse than the unknown itself. Now, getting to that point is tough, as we've all acknowledged. There was a woman in my book who needed to leave her job. She was a senior level person. It took her 5 years to do it. And when she did it, she was instantly relieved, as if a burden was just completely lifted off of her shoulders. We just don't know when we're in it, what it's like to be out of it. And again, my major point, that your value is not stagnant, your identity is not stagnant, and we have to work with each other, with the center, to change and grow and to accept the evolution of that value and identity. Now, finally, this is my this is all my information. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. My website, I have a blog where I talk about all these things, and I encourage you to sign up for them. They're quick reads. And as I said, or as Lisa said at the beginning, I have a special offer on my book, which is a 50% discount on a signed copy. I will personally sign these copies and get them out to you. And even though you may not have an involuntary exit, an unplanned transition, I will tell you that everyone who's read the book has said They wish they had it sooner so they could be prepared for what comes next. Just read the Amazon reviews and you'll see what they're saying. And again, we will have multiple jobs in our careers. We will work longer, and we owe it to ourselves to figure out what it is that we want to do that will inspire us, even if it's at our current company and we want to do something completely different. As Lisa also said, that if you would like to dig into any of these topics, including using a recruiter, how to maintain resilience and strength when you're in this process, how to interview after you've been let go, what are some emotional triggers that you can expect while you're in this process and how you get around them. We will have a smaller session. We're planning something for February. It'll probably be around February 10th on a Friday. We talked about that, and just let Lisa and Viviana know.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll also send you the link when we send the recording. So Robin has graciously agreed to do a follow-up session with a smaller group, limited to only folks who, you know, were here, so you can have a more intimate conversation about how to move forward. We will do a separate event on recruiting because I think there's enough of an interest, and we've heard it in the past for a larger audience. But we want to thank you all for joining us, for being so vulnerable. We will edit out the recording and send it off. Give us a week or so to do so. It will also be on our website. Thank you, Robin, for, you know, inspiring us and nudging us to move ourselves forward. We really, really appreciate that. And stay tuned. We have more events coming up for the Rucker Center for Women in Business. So look on our website, check out our email, and stay tuned. There's always more to come, including a book club that we are launching in the next month. So thank you again. Have a great rest of the week, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you all. You all make the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Viviana.